Hey, Carol, did you get any rain?
I did. Earlier in the week, I got almost an inch of rain, and then we've just had these little pop up storms, but they don't deliver very much.
No, they don't. I woke up to thunder and lightning this morning. It was really loud, but again, did not produce much.
Right. And I went outside and everything was wet this morning, but there was like 0.07 inches of rain in the gauge. So
Yeah, mine was less than a quarter inch. So, oh well, it's the way it goes. Maybe we should get started.
maybe we should get started. And it's your turn to start.
Oh, it is my turn to start. Sorry. Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Dee.
Good morning, Carol. How does your garden grow?
My garden grows pretty well. I can't even remember what day we recorded last week, but I think it was on Friday. So that's 2 Fridays in a row. Go us.
Yeah, that's unusual. We seem to move it around, mostly because of me.
Sometimes because of me. So I did mow on Monday. I had to stop twice for little rain showers. The first one, it's like I got back into the garage and it stopped. And then the second one lasted about 10 minutes. And then I waited another 30 and went out there and finished it. I did cut back my big lavender in the garden. You reminded me of that. I wrote a blog post about it. I don't
Yeah,
know if you've read it, but I have a very
I
catchy
haven't read
title.
it yet.
It's got a
Sorry.
very catchy title.
I'm sorry. Well, we'll put it in the newsletter so we'll all read it.
There you go. I weeded some more. I watered. I checked on my seedlings. I've been picking all kinds of stuff out of the vegetable garden. You know, you go from that, when are my tomatoes going to ripen to what am I going to do with all these ripe tomatoes? Yeah, we
Yeah,
hit that point. This morning I got out there and I fertilized all the containers and I sweated it out because that little brief shower raised the humidity to like 150%.
it's that way here too this morning, which is part of the reason my voice isn't good because I have asthma and when it's like this kind of weather, it's hard on my voice. So it's August. So you're saying that you'll probably stop saying that it's humid?
No, I said I will probably stop doing the fertilizing of my
Ah,
containers and just sort of let them fade off into the fall, as they say. I was out there this morning. I thought, you know what? This is probably it. So, how about your garden, Dee?
it's been hotter than Hades here. I mean, really hot, like 104, 100, 102. So I've been going out in the morning really early and I pulled out most of my tomato plants and I'll probably pull out the rest of them this week because they were kind of not great this year. I got some tomatoes out of them. I've got one plant that's a probably a big B for a super steak, and I planted it late, which was good because I had that big rush of first tomatoes and then very little. And what I did have was messed with by the stink bugs, and I'm just telling you, they were not my best this year. But I harvested green beans and I ate them last night. Delicious. I cut things way back. I pulled out spent daylily scapes. I weeded, and I'm doing this all in the mornings because it's really hot. I moved some zinnias around that I started new zinnias.
Right?
So I'm trying to decide if I want to talk about that now or in my favorites. Yeah, now's fine. Okay, so zinnias are a funny plant and they get mildew really bad.
Yes.
Okay. The Oklahoma series does not get mildew until later in the season, but even it will get mildew if you have the kind of humid summer we've had. So we're at that stage where I'm just about ready to pull all those out. But because
Right.
I love zinnias so much and they provide so much color, so much nectar for pollinators, I planted more. But this time I moved them into the potager because I kept having trouble with whatever the bug was in the cut flower gardens. So I've moved a few around now that they've gotten about, how tall is that? 4 inches?
I guess.
I've about 4 inches. So, and I also pinch them off at 2 inches, which I'm putting in a story today. And I guess that's about it. I mean, I should probably do a reel so that people can see it longer than 24 hours. But I moved around. I watered them. They were very sad. But then with that little dab of rain, they did fine. That's all that's going on in my garden.
Well, interesting that you brought up zinnias because I'm looking at our show notes for favorites and we both have different zinnias in our favorites. So I'll tell you about mine. So I love the zinnia angustifolia, the crystal series, and I've got the white and the yellow. And I started those from seed, and they're the tiniest little seedlings. They're blooming gloriously, along with a zinnia profusion red yellow bicolor that All America
Yep,
Selection sent me, along with Coleus Premium Sun Coral Candy that they sent me. And by the
right.
way, the crystal white was a 1997 All America. So I got these All America selections growing in sort of these shallow bowls, and they're
Uh-huh.
doing really well. And that premium sun coral candy, tell you what, give that a little bit of sun and it takes off.
Okay, so I didn't grow it this year, even though they sent us seeds because last year it was so slow. But I'll try it next year because the seeds last a while.
I'll put a picture of this little combo. I mean, really, like it's the end of quote unquote planning out stuff. And I'm like, oh, I've got these profusion red, yellow bicolors. I got this coleus. I've got some extras of my favorite little zinnias. I know. I'll just put them in these random little shallow bowl things and stick them
It
over
looks
here and see
good,
what happens. They look pretty
doesn't
good.
it? Yeah. I wanted to say something about your zinnias or zinnias. They that particular type, the two types that you're growing, they really don't get much mildew. I mean, it takes
They don't.
a long time to get there. So that's something our listeners should be aware of. If you do Zinnia elegans instead of Zinnia angustifolia or those other ones, which are the profusions, which are also small, the elegans get more mildew than the little guys. And, that's just something to keep in mind. I went to my friend's house, Ruthie, that reminds me, yesterday, because she gave me some seeds of something she had. And I was looking at her. She has, I suspect they're that profusion purple. They're these little short purple ones.
Uh huh.
And she planted them out with pentas. So purple little zinnias with big tops, big blooms with these little pentas that are pink. That was stunning. And then she also did summer snapdragon in the middle. That's a
Cool.
good combo. Yeah. So I can't wait to see your stuff in your pots. Isn't this what you did minus the Suncoleus? Isn't this what you did it around your mailbox last year? Didn't you
Well,
do?
around the mailbox, yes, I have the zinnia angustifolia, and also there I have the yellow Zaharas, and I did not start those from seed. I bought them up at the greenhouse, and she sells them in I think, an 8-inch container, 3 plants, and I split those three out or split
Yeah.
several of them out. That's what I planted around the mailbox. Looks really, really good.
Yeah, I remembered that last year you did those too. So very pretty. And don't need a lot of water. Of course, Oklahoma's different.
Don't
You'd
need
have to water
deadheading
them here.
either. Don't really need
Yeah, they
much
don't need
deadhead.
deadheading, which of course the elegans. Somebody asked me, I did a video. Well, I'll just launch into mine. So mine would have to be the tide pool zinnias, which are an elegans type. Yes, they have mildew, but I don't really care because the flowers are extraordinary. And I did a little Instagram video on them and my other zinnias that are doing well. And several people reached out in questions and said, "Do you deadhead those?" Yeah, all the time because I want those new flowers coming up all the time and I want the new leaves because they
And
tend to mildew. Yes,
and you want cut flowers to take inside.
which I did. And I have had really good flowers this year. So I'm happy about that.
Excellent. All right, let's do the question of the week. So I went and spoke to the Franklin Township Garden Club on Tuesday night.
Yep,
It's a small group. They're just trying to get started. And so when I finished my most excellent talk, I
I'm
asked
sure
if
it was. You're very good.
they do love my hoe collection.
Your whole collection is hilarious, especially since you don't use it. But,
Yes.
everybody collects things.
Yeah. And especially if they don't see it coming. Anyway, so this one gentleman, he said, why didn't my wisteria bloom? And he said he's got like 2 posts and like a cross thing, and he's got this wisteria growing up the post and around. And it's never bloomed, and he says it's full of vigorous growth. And so my first assumption was the same as the answer you wrote here. I
Go
said
for it.
it might be the Asian wisteria, which is notoriously stingy with blooming.
Right, because you get a late freeze and it snaps all those and they're gone. I mean, and that's that.
It blooms before the foliage comes out.
Right. Which my suggestion when I get that question is always get rid of the Asian wisteria. We don't need it here anyway. And it tries to take down your T posts or your house or your porch or wherever you put it. Instead, plant the American one because the American one is native to both of our climates and it blooms once the foliage is already out and it blooms a little later. And even if you get a late freeze, which I have had, it still blooms somewhat. And if we don't get a
Yes.
late freeze, it is covered. Now, when I gave that answer, it was actually at the Oklahoma Water Garden Society. When I gave that answer in a talk, they were not, the man who asked the question was not satisfied because he doesn't like the fact that the American wisteria has leaves.
That's
Teach his own.
teach their own. So he did say where he bought it, and it was a local place. And then
Mm-hmm.
this other person that was there, she says, well, I worked there in high school and college, and she says they only really sold the American, so I don't know that you bought an Asian one there. I'm like, well, that could be. He doesn't have the tag. And so he's, the other thing I said is sometimes people do what they call root pruning, where they shove that shovel in around and kind of cut off a bunch of roots, and it shocks the plant into blooming the next
Mm-hmm.
year.
Yeah,
So
people do that. It's worth a try. Also, fertilizing it with a good balanced fertilizer just to
yeah.
see if that helps. I mean, there are several things you can try.
He said he actually might take it out, although he
I
said it's
would.
pretty big. Take it out and then buy one that he is sure is the American.
I would, and I would plant with it a coral honeysuckle, and then you got two American things in the same deal that bloom at different times and attract different pollinators. That's what I'd do, but that's
All
just
right.
me.
Well, I'm going to do a quote so we can go into our most excellent flower topic. I am not an armchair gardener. For the last 40 years of my life, I have broken my back, my fingernails, and sometimes my heart in the practical pursuit of my most favorite occupation, Vita Sackville West.
I found that one in a book I was reading,
Oh
and
my
I just
gosh.
was like, oh my gosh, that is so me. And
That's,
so
oh, yeah. Yeah.
my
And I'm
heart,
thinking
yeah,
40 years. How old is
yeah.
that woman? And then I'm thinking, oh, never
Oh,
mind.
right. Right there with her. Okay.
Exactly.
Started in my teens, so I've been doing it longer than 40 years. All right. So we're doing our series. Fall is for planting. And so you wrote, can you plant perennials in the late summer and fall when they are often on sale? And native plants that fall into this category. So the big answer is
Yes. Next topic.
yes, but do some things first. So, in fact, I was thinking yesterday as I was driving down the country roads, I thought I want crown beard. I really want crown beard. It's a native. Don't ask me the botanical name because I just thought of it off the top of my head. But I want crown beard, and I have tried growing it from seed in the upper pasture. I've tried all kinds of things, and I can't get it to grow. So I'm ready to go buy plants. So I almost texted the people at Native Plants OKC and said, do you have any crown beard? Because I'll run down there and get some. And then I got distracted and had to find stuff to do around here. But in connection with that, you want to buy healthy plants.
Yes. Believe it or not, some garden centers are adding new stock for late summer and fall because as the word gets out, this is a great time to plant. And that's, it is really the best time to plant is late summer, fall. It's less stressful for
Right.
the plant. But people are so used to spring planting, and by the time, Labor Day comes around, they're like, I'm over it. But so,
Yeah. And we should stress that we're talking about like September.
yeah,
September is a good time to plant. Don't plant in the middle of August. It's still kind of hot. Which reminds me, I got sent three hydrangeas from Proven Winners. They just showed up out of the blue. No email, no nothing. And they're hydrangea arborescens Invincible Sublime, which has really huge blooms. I'm thrilled to get them, but I've been having to rehab those little babies over in the shade because they had a rough trip. So if you're going to
yeah.
order, I would wait and order and ask them to ship it at the beginning of September, personally.
Yes. And by the way, proven winners, I actually got an email and they said, would you like these three shrubs? It's one sublime, one false cypress, and one aronia.
So that's what they wanted to send. I got that same email and I haven't written her back, but I'm going to and say no, thank you, because false cypress hates Oklahoma with a
Ah,
passion, and I don't really want aronia. But the sublime is good. I Here's why I think I got those, and I'll have to check with Natalie to be sure. I think it's because I sent that deal back and said I would love to have firelight, and I bet they didn't find any firelight, and they thought, oh, we'll give Dee some sublime, which should do really well here. So that's great. Okay, so let's
we
talk
are
a bit
way
about
off topic.
not really, because we're talking about fall planting and those
Right.
are
Right.
floral. So number two, I think, is extremely important. You cannot imagine how many people who talk to me about the Lowe's sales rack.
The clearance racks, and Lowe's has
Oh,
them, Home Depot has them. It's this stuff. It looks terrible.
yeah.
And they could be diseased. They could have been like not watered all summer. And people think, well, it's a great bargain, but it may not be a bargain if it introduces either it's a dead plant or it introduces some kind of a disease or something into your garden. So I'm leery of clearance racks unless I know what I'm doing. I do know what I'm
Right.
doing.
If
I
I've
think I
been,
know what I'm doing.
I think you know what you're doing. But I also think, I mean, we know which plants, like for example, if you found it's a hibiscus, but Rose of Sharon. Say you
Yeah.
found some fancy Rose of Sharon that is on the clearance rack. I might buy that because you know what? You just trim those babies back and they're super vigorous and they'll do just fine. If it's something like a hydrangea that is big leaf hydrangea, just walk away because it's just going to die. And some of those evergreens too, even though I know that's not perennials. So same with perennials. I probably wouldn't buy an echinacea, for example, on the clearance rack because those have been forced to bloom at a particular time where they look their best. And usually they're kind of pooped out. So, check them over carefully. And then tip that pot, no matter where you buy it, and it's okay to tip a pot. People will look at you funny, but who cares? Tip that pot and look to see that the perennials aren't root bound. Because if they're completely root bound, you're going to have to tease the roots apart and you may not even want them. But you also want something that's rooted in the pot a little bit because I've seen pots where there's stuff in there that isn't rooted.
Yeah, because they're sticking cutting in there that may have been like rooted, a small rooted cutting. They're sticking it in there. And I know at courts, she says, well, I have this, but we just struck them. We just potted them up like a week ago. So you probably want to wait until
Mm-hmm.
they've had a chance to grow. And I'd rather they grow them because they've got a weak fertilizer in every drop of water that's watered. They've got a weak fertilizer in there and they'll take better care of it. But yes, if it's root bound, you need to be really careful. And if you just see no soil at all, I think I would pass on that one too.
I would pass on that one for sure. Bob Scott is like that too. He takes a lot of cuttings and he'll just flat tell you, I'll sell this to you, but you need to baby it. And can you do that? Because if you can't, just leave it here and we'll buy it later in the summer because he babies them. And then you also want, one thing I was going to say is a lot of these big nurseries will buy things as plugs. So when you
Yes.
tip that plot, if you see just a plug and it has no roots on it yet, I'd pass it up then too. Number four.
Now that you've got your new perennials home, you want to
Mm-hmm.
dig a hole that's as deep as the pot and but wider than the pot so that you can put that plant in there. You don't want to plant it deeper or shallower. And then in my case, sometimes it's like, that's good enough. And then backfill it with the same soil that you dug out of the hole. A lot of people are tempted to go get peat moss or something like that
Yeah,
to put
don't
in the
don't
hole. Don't
overdo
do
it.
that. Just
Don't overdo
put
it.
back the same dirt. It needs to understand this is the dirt it has to live in. No babying.
So here, if you have a really crummy soil, and a lot of my clients do, you are welcome to work in some leaf mold
Sure.
from your shredded leaf pile if you want to. That's okay. You can also work in a little bit of just basic compost, like back to nature, which is composted cottonseed hulls, but work it into the soil. Don't just put some around it and then put in soil, because then again, for one thing, the plant won't like it. And another thing, it doesn't know what to do from there. Interestingly, I'm having a really hard time. I bought a bur oak early in the season. And it
Right?
took it forever to come out of dormancy. It finally did. But now it's starting to die from the top down. And I have no idea why. And we did not backfill with anything because it's a bur oak. It's native to Oklahoma. So we put it in the sandy soil. We've watered it properly. So the point of that is sometimes you do stuff and it just dies. And,
Yes.
it's not your fault. That plant didn't want to live here. All
So
right. So,
when you
yes,
said that, when you said it was dying from the top down, then I immediately thought of the dreaded oak wilt, which oak trees will die from the top down when they're infested with oak wilt, which is very
could
deadly.
be, could be. And
Hopefully,
I hope
hopefully
not.
not.
Hopefully not, because I have a lot of oak trees around here. But I'm about ready to pull it up, throw it in the trash. It's not a huge tree. And send it with Bill, to the dumpster. And then just have one installed next year that's a bigger size. Because I'm not young. Like
So
Vita.
I'm
I've
going to
gardened a long
digress.
time.
I'm going to
Yeah.
digress again uh,
Okay.
to oaks. So in the nature of oaks, which is one of Doug Tallamy's books that I read a couple
Yep.
years ago, he said you are better off planting an acorn and letting that grow. And he says
I
it'll
know.
grow and catch up faster. So you need to find you some acorns, Dee.
Well, I have a client and a friend who has three beautiful bur oak trees, and I could just plant hers. And he actually says to plant three acorns together is what he says to do. And I want to say one more thing because somebody's going to call me out on it. Supposedly, oak wilt is not in Oklahoma, and
Correct.
that's all I'm going to say. The end. All right. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. I don't
Back to
care.
perennials.
Back to perennials. If the perennial has blooms on it, cut those off. I did the same thing when I moved my zinnias around. It is too hard for that plant to take up nutrients and support that bloom. So just chop them off so they can put emphasis into their root system.
Yes. And that's a hard thing for people to do
It
um,
is.
because it looks so nice, especially if you've got a really nice blooming perennial. It's better
Mhm.
to cut those blooms off. But
It is, because they'll do better. And echinaceas are a prime example of that. And even then, echinaceas are tricky. They'll die on you for no reason. All right. And then you said periodically in the winter, check anything that's newly planted to make sure it hasn't heaved out of the soil. That happens here a lot because we have freeze thaw cycles all the time. And gently push it back in. I just take my shoe and push it back in with my shoe
yeah,
gently. I would say heucheras are the worst about that. They like
yeah.
to commit
And
suicide.
mums.
Mums too. Good Lord, what is their problem? So those two things. And then your number 8 was the one I was going to say if you said. Go ahead.
You need to remember to water when you don't get rain. Just because you're planting in the fall doesn't mean you can just forget it, like planting bulbs. You don't have to water in bulbs once you plant them, but you do need to water in these plants if you don't get rain. And I water until things get kind of frosty out there.
So here, the rule of thumb is anything over 40 degrees outside, you are allowed to water because the roots are still growing. So, just play it by ear. If we have a long string of dry, warm weather, I would definitely water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's complicated because lately we don't get that cold until January. And that's when stuff sometimes just croaks off for many reasons. All right, next.
Well, I was going to say here, we've had some really dry falls where normally we have a pretty good amount of rain. And so
Yeah.
people were kind of like, I put my hose away. It's like, why'd you do that?
Yeah,
Get it
don't put
out.
your hose away until you're watching the weather. I think as a gardener, you just have to watch the weather, period. And so you're watching the weather and you see it's going to be 28 degrees. You bring in the hose then or drain it, whatever you do with yours. Bring in those sprayers.
Leave the foliage until the fall. Don't cut back the foliage. Just let it die back naturally and then cut it back in the fall, in the spring. I think I said
Yeah,
fall.
but you meant spring. We all know. And then be sure to mark where you plant new stuff so you can see where to water, how to check it through winter. and see for regrowth in the spring. And if there isn't any, wait on it a little bit because sometimes it takes them a little while to break dormancy. But if they don't, then pitch them and start over because things happen.
Yeah, and this is especially true if you're planting into an established perennial border, for example, or up in your meadow, then
Yeah.
sometimes you don't need to water that whole established bed, but you should water the new stuff and you lose sight of it. And I
Hmm.
know I visited the Better Homes and Gardens test gardens in Des Moines, Iowa one
I bet
fall.
that was fun.
It was
Yeah.
fun. It was like this private tour that our friend Deb Wiley arranged for me to go on. It was really nice. But
Deb is nice.
they cut the tops off of like the gallon containers and just kind of create this ring, and then they put that around the newly planted stuff. And so you
Right.
could tell anybody water where the rings are. And I've told people to try that. Like if I've given them some of my special secret exotic stuff that I don't give to just anybody, I said, put a ring around it because you'll lose sight of it otherwise.
Yeah. Good idea. Is that all we
And
want to say about
I
perennials
think
in the fall?
I think that is it. And so I am reminded that up at the local greenhouse, I saw on the Facebook or Instagram, they've got their perennials 50% off. Now I know she hasn't done a whole bunch of new ones, so but they will be well taken care of. And so I'm thinking, oh, those are 50% off. I should run up there. Hadn't been in a couple of weeks to
So I have a
get
question for
perennials.
you. Will you buy them now? Will you plant them now or will you wait?
Here I might be tempted to stick them in the ground. Well, I'll tell you what. We're not in the hundreds, but I did
Right.
see that the temperatures next week are going to be around highs around 90. So,
Yeah.
it's 50-50. We'll
Yeah. It could
see.
go either way. Kind of here too. I mean, I know I'm going to be watching things like a hawk and I'm not going anywhere. So I might go ahead and plant them, but I probably wouldn't advise my clients to. If you simply must buy those perennials that are half off, put them in a little shaded nursery area
Hmm.
and that you water along with other stuff you water and be sure and water them every day because that's what they need. And then just watch them, take care of them. And then when it's better to plant them then. Oh, I get asked right now a lot about daylilies too. So we might as well talk about those too. That's another perennial. Daylilies should not be planted now, September, middle to late September. And you'll know in Oklahoma City because the Daylily Club usually has a sale in the fall at the perfect time because they all dig their daylilies, share them around, tag them, and then sell them. And so that's a good idea. Most daylily people will not ship them to you until the fall, and you don't want to buy any that they're going to ship now because then you have to put them in pots and then you have to babysit them and it's really hard. Ask me how I know this.
Well, I'm going to say the local daylily place.
Yeah.
I don't, well, I mean, he's not going to stay open much longer. He's not going to be open after
Right.
Labor Day. And he doesn't do mail order anymore, but he'll still dig up daylilies. And here, I think you can still plant a daylily in August in Indiana if the weather is moderate. I mean, if we had some weird Oklahoma situation, I wouldn't. But here, I think people still can put them in the ground
And
carefully.
I think the reason it's such a big deal here is number one, they have very shallow roots, so the heat really hits them. They also have roots that retain water, that hold water, and that just means your daylily rots. And nobody
Right.
wants that.
Nobody.
As to why they don't rot after they've been in the ground for a while, I don't know. Sometimes they rot a little bit and then they come bouncing back like little darlings that they are. You want me to do the next quote and we'll go into vegetables?
Bounce on to that next topic.
In August, the large mass of berries, which, when in flower, had attracted so many wild bees, gradually assumed their bright, velvety crimson hue, and by their weight again bent down and broke their tender limbs. Henry David Thoreau. I wonder if he was talking about blackberries. I don't
You
know.
know, I don't know because he talks about crimson hue, so maybe that's raspberries.
It could be raspberries, which they're kind of related. So, our vegetable this week is blackberries. I suggested this because I saw an old article about erect or upright blackberries in Kitchen Gardener magazine. And I thought, we haven't talked about blackberries in a while. Well, now I know why, because I went to research this topic. And you know what I decided?
What?
There's a blackberry farm literally 2 miles from my house. I will just go pick blackberries there because what a pain.
So
All
I will
right,
say
on that
three
topic,
things. I will say three things about blackberries.
go ahead.
At my previous house, so this goes back to the 90s, I attempted to plant a blackberry because
Oh,
it is one of my favorite berries.
me too.
And I did not have good luck. And here I thought I'm going to plant some thornless blackberries. And I ordered them from Stark Brothers. And
Yeah.
then I realized that where I was planting them, they just didn't have enough room to grow. And I thought, this is a pain. And by the way, they are like raspberries, they are briars. So they sucker
Yes.
and they come up all over. So you can't really just like, it's not like planting an apple tree and, you have a tree. It's planting a
No.
patch. You plant a patch of blackberries.
Yes. And oh my gosh. Okay, so this
And
information. Oh, there was a third thing. What was it?
every time I went to pick those blackberries, and I did get a few,
You got
man,
chiggers,
that
didn't you?
chigger bites. It's like they go together,
Chiggers.
blackberries and chiggers.
Yes, they do. And probably ticks too, frankly. So if you're going to go pick blackberries, you want to wear permethrin bonded clothing and double sided tape to stop
Yes.
the chiggers, the mosquitoes, all the things. All right. So I got the rest of this information from Oklahoma State University. God bless them. And it is in a PDF online that they have called Blackberry and Raspberry Culture for the Home Garden from OSU. All right. Before deciding to grow blackberries, several points should be considered. They like a sunny site location. They
They
like
do.
sandy, loamy soils with added organic matter.
You
But they
don't
will
have
tell
that. You don't have that. This.
I do actually. Because
Oh,
remember, I
okay.
live east of I-35, which is where this blackberry farm is.
Oh,
So
okay.
yes, I do have that. I have nice sandy soil. I wouldn't say it's loamy, but I've made it loamy over the years. All right, so add organic matter. But they will tolerate a wider range of soil types, more than most other fruits. Now, varieties and choices. The more popular varieties for my climate and yours were developed by Arkansas State University. And actually, as I remember it, Arkansas and Oklahoma State worked together to create these. They often have tribal names like Arapaho, Apache, Osage, Washita, which is not just a place, it's also a tribe. And Washita is also a really funny word because in Oklahoma, people laugh when we get a new weather person because they will always call it Uachita. It's Washita. Not to be confused with the Wichita Mountains, it's the Washita Mountains,
There
which
you go.
actually I read the other day is mispronounced by people because it's really called something else, but whatever. So it was once that blackberries had thorns and that
Yes.
was the best tasting fruit, which I get it. There are wild blackberries all around my property or were. But through hybridization, they've developed thornless varieties with very large, tasty berries. And then you get this whole thing about primocane versus floricane. Primocane means they fruit the first year. Floricane means they fruit the second year. Primocane types actually fruit the first and second year. And then you have to go in and prune all this stuff. And like I
Yes.
said, I am not growing blackberries. I'm just not going to.
Yeah. So basically, the primocane means it fruits on new canes, and so you have to
Right.
go in and cut
New
out
growth.
old canes, and then the floricane is like it fruits on the second year cane. So you have to know which
Right.
type you have, and suddenly it's like, that little package of blackberries at this store seems like the way to go.
Yeah. I mean, you can buy pretty good blackberries anymore. And you remember when we talked last week about the special fruits that, they've come out with the sweetest berries? I
Right.
might just look for that package, but you can go pick them nearby too. It's at Sorghum Mill Blackberry Farm if you want to. They also have strawberries or used to. So, long story short is you have to mulch them, you have to amend the soil, you have to raise the soil if you've got clay soil. I'm just going to refer all of you who have the desire to be little blackberry farmers to Oklahoma State's information or Missouri Botanic Gardens information or Arkansas State, or I'm sure Purdue has great
Yes.
information too.
In fact, this is Time to give a shout out
Oh,
to all of our state extensions.
yes.
Mine's affiliated with Purdue. Ohio State's is wonderful. Illinois' got a great site. Look up, and you just put in, I would look up blackberries, Purdue University Extension, and any
Mhm.
article about growing blackberries or anything would come up. And so, because the last thing you listed here is that you should spray with lime sulfur at bud break to stop anthracnose.
And now there's a newly introduced nasty pest that I didn't know about because I don't grow blackberries. And it literally said on the OSU website, it said refer to your county extension about what to spray for this pest. And I thought, I'm out. I'm out. I'm not spraying. I'm
Well,
not
yeah.
spraying my blackberries. I'm not.
Yeah. I was
So,
talking to this
mhm.
guy, this person where I was speaking, he was asking about, he has peach trees. And he says, I
Oh,
found out after I planted it how difficult it is to grow peaches in Indiana.
it
And
is
I says,
very difficult to grow them anywhere. Oklahoma too. Keep going.
yes.
I had two peach trees. You know how many peaches I got off those trees? Not enough. Okay, go ahead.
Well, so I
Keep
think
buying
we have
more.
my favorite kind of pie, by the way, is blackberry pie. Haven't had it in
Hmm.
a long time because there's a place I used to go get that had it, and I just haven't been there in a long time. It's like, that's out in Mooresville. And local listeners know that I'm talking about Gray Brothers Cafeteria. I haven't been there in forever.
You should
But
go.
well, next week I'm going out to my sister's,
Uh-huh.
and I thought on the way home I could stop by and get some blackberry pie.
I think
Anyway,
you should because you know what? Blackberries are fruitful at your place right now. We've just finished. So in
I
Oklahoma,
don't,
I
they could be
assume.
getting canned blackberries for all I know. Anyway, I'll do a quote. Show me a family of readers and I will show you the people who move the world. Napoleon Bonaparte. Do you think Napoleon really said that?
I don't know, but I like the quote. He is right if he said it, whoever said it. It was probably a speechwriter if he said it.
Yes.
So on our bookshelf, this is actually, I suggested that you actually profile this because we ended up talking about it off camera last week. And I said, that sounds completely fascinating. You should share it next week. So go.
So the book is Brave the Wild River, the untold story of two women who mapped the botany of the Grand Canyon by Melissa Savigny. And I don't know if I said her last name right, but so Melissa is a science writer. She's based in Tucson. I don't know why we didn't find out about this book sooner. It won the National Outdoor Book Award for History
Yeah.
Biography, Reading the West Book Award in Memoir Biography, Book List Top of the List winner for nonfiction in 2023, a New Yorker Best Book of 2023. And so I don't even know where I heard about this. And
I
I
don't
thought
either.
I need to keep better notes of how these things, cross my path. But anyway, it's the tale of these two botanists in the summer of 1938. A botanist, and her name was Elzaida Clover, and the other one was Lois Jotter. They were going to run the Colorado River to so that they could map the botany of it. And so they had expedition leader who wanted to like turn this into like lead lots of expeditions up and down the river. They had a zoologist, and then they had two amateur boatmen with them. And the zoologist wanted to like collect the animals. And so he's wanting to do taxidermy down the river.
Ew.
So it was
Wow.
very
No
dangerous.
kidding.
And, there were a lot of people that never made it out alive. And they talked about a married couple that went on their honeymoon and they never made it out alive. But these two women, which she refers to as Clover and Jotter, because that's their names, they made it and they surveyed plant life up and down the Grand Canyon. And they were affiliated with the University of Michigan. And
Uh-huh.
a lot of their collection stuff is still in herbariums there. And I think also maybe at the Smithsonian. Yes.
I'm raising my hand because how is it we never heard of these women?
Well,
I mean,
I don't
how?
know,
How
but
did we not ever hear of them? I don't even know. I mean, I never heard of them anywhere.
so
That's crazy.
I don't know, but thank you to Melissa L. Savigny, who
Right.
traced that. It took them 43 days. And
Impressive.
Clover, she was interested in all the cactus. She was a big cactus fanatic. And so getting pressings of cactus, you basically have to take out the meat part of the cactus leaf, the pad.
Oh,
And so just unbelievable.
that sounds
And
horrible.
well, and at one point they thought that they had a couple of stop off places where they could collect letters and things like that. And they were being followed by newspaper reporters, and they were, it was in the newspaper because these two women were the first women to go all the way down the Colorado River. And I
And
started
yet,
reading it.
and yet they're visible to history, except for now. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
So I started reading it, and because when I went to check it out of the library, I put a hold on both the reading copy and the audio book.
Right.
And I got the reading copy and I started reading it, and then I got the audio book, and so I finished it as an audio book. Just I'll tell you what, go get this from your library or just go buy it. I might even just go buy it because it is really, really good.
I
And
think it's worth buying just so that it gets more attention.
yeah,
That's why we're sharing it. Yeah.
yeah. And so yeah, it's quite good. But that is, let me back up to the title.
It's a long one.
Brave the Wild River, the untold story of two women who mapped the botany of the Grand Canyon by Melissa Savigny. And I think it is well worth reading and or listening to.
Nice. So, moving on to our dirt. Here's our quote. Time has its own dimensions, and neither the sun nor the clock can encompass them all. Hal Borland, who we love. Love Hal Borland.
Yes. Got a new Hal
So,
Borland book.
dirt,
I got a new Hal Borland book this year.
old. You got a new old Hal
Well, yeah,
Borland
it is
book.
from 1964. And Dee, I'm telling you, Sundial of the Seasons, it is fabulous. It is
I bet, because
fabulous.
he's a wonderful, isn't it his New York Times columns?
Yeah, New York Times columns from like the 1940s, 50s, and early 60s.
That would be awesome. Really awesome. All right. So for our dirt, I was watching Oklahoma Gardening. Yeah, I watch it. Not every week, but I watch it quite a bit. And they did a little piece on weed killers. And I thought, oh, weed killers. Yeah, here we go. And then he he said something really interesting. He said, so the new Roundup that is being sold to home gardeners, not
Correct.
landscapers, home gardeners, it has replaced glyphosate. And he had one that was like a 365 or the 4 month one. And so it had three different things in it. And so I actually went over to Bayer because Bayer produces Roundup. People don't really know that, but Bayer aspirin, yeah, those people, they're the same company that produces all of those, most of those, I should say, weed killers. And not just weed killers, they also have fertilizers, they have systemics, they have a lot of different things. So we thought it'd be interesting to say what is in your Roundup now. And so this is what it says on their website. And then Carol went and did some more research too. To further reduce litigation risk, we have transitioned the manufacturing of our glyphosate products for the U.S. residential LNG market to new formulations that have different active ingredients. We have taken this action exclusively to manage litigation risk and not because of any safety concerns. The vast, sorry, the vast majority of claims have come from residential LNG users. So this step largely eliminates the primary source of future claims. This action does not impact any of our glyphosate-based agriculture or professional products. And now it contains an ingredient called triclopyr. Triclopyr. And I'm going to offer no comment on that. I'm just going to let that stand. What would you like to say?
I would like to say nothing further. I have stopped using Roundup products. I'm just sitting here thinking on my little acreage, and it's just not worth it to me. And
Right.
I know I will say when they did put in my new beds and stuff, they put down some Roundup,
Sure. That's very common.
and they did that to kill the grass and everything. This triclopyr, it sounded
Yeah, I
like
know
it
nothing
doesn't
about
kill
it.
out grasses. It only kills out broadleaves. Because
That's why they have, that's why it has three ingredients in it now, because, and that's what David said on Oklahoma Gardening is that The three products together don't work as well as glyphosate by itself, but they've made this decision to do this, and supposedly the three together work pretty well. I will say that I still have some glyphosate. I occasionally use it because, like, say I have poison ivy in my bed or something that I cannot get rid of, like, say, autumn clematis, but I'm really, really careful about how I use it. And I use a product that is pre-mixed because I don't want to mix that stuff. I wear a respirator because I'm allergic to scents anyway. And I glove up and I'm very careful. I think one of the situations, well, the company ran into was that they were getting sued a lot, obviously. And so I don't see how, well, anyway, I'm not sure this solves their problem completely, but it's none of my business as far as that goes. And you know what? I don't care if you use it or don't use it. I'm not weighing in. Just be
Yes.
careful. If you're going to use something like that, be careful. And I always
Yes.
tell my clients, buy the one that's pre-mixed that runs battery operated and you just spray it and you can buy refills for it. It lasts
Yes.
forever. So there
Yes.
you go.
So that is interesting. In case people didn't realize the Roundup you're
I
buying is
didn't.
not glyphosate anymore, it's something else.
But if you're a landscaper, you can still buy the other. So you don't have to write and tell us that you still buy it because you will. And you don't have to. We know.
I will do the next quote. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. And that is Leo F. Biscaglia. And I don't know why it says the next thing after it, but I think that that is incorrect.
I think that was from our other quote that we took out and moved around.
Uh,
So Leo was a Christian writer and he was really popular in the 80s, if I remember right.
I believe
And
that I had one of his books.
they were really sweet, dear books. I don't know what happened to him, but he was very fun to read. I
And
just remember
I
that.
think, I could hop like a bunny and I know where I think I have that book. Anyway, rabbit holes, Dee.
So the blackberries were quite the rabbit hole, and I'm also in the process of researching microphones for my desktop. Yes, we know I've been kind of echoey and sound like I'm in a barrel. We don't know why because nothing really changed, but we changed locations. We've done various things to try to fix it. Today I'm using my Rode microphone, which I use when I record outside because people complained about the cicadas. But my desktop mic, which I ordered, which is the same brand Carol is now using, did not get here because I think Amazon sent my package to Tanzania and they've been trying to get it back ever since. It's supposed to be here tomorrow.
One would think, first of all, I don't even know how a package destined for Oklahoma ends up in Tanzania, but I would think that they would just like resubmit the order, repack the box with the stuff you ordered.
Duh.
It's not like it's all like one of a kind and give you that box and not worry about a box in Tanzania.
Yeah, and but here's the even better part. So it's really hard to complain to them now. They've made it very hard, but I managed to finally get to a human. And Pal and I tried to figure out what was going on, but they've taken away all of the shipping information. Like it's not on the website. He couldn't find it. And he just kept saying, I'm really sorry and thank you for being so nice. That's what he kept saying. And finally I
Yeah.
said, well, thank you for trying, Pal. I will be I will be waiting for it. And the funny part is they have a little deal that says after August the 3rd. Now, bear in mind, I ordered this like July 28th and it was supposed to be here the 29th. On August 3rd, you can cancel it. And I was like, well, okay, whatever. And it has 3 books in there and my calcium, all the things you need. All right, I'm done with that. Now tell me about your rabbit hole because it is a deep and wide one.
So I fell down a rabbit hole because I was looking for the next lost lady of garden writing and I pulled a book off my shelf and it's like, I'm okay with this one. It was not too hard to find information. And so I realized that she had written a book or a list of gardening books for display in the New York Public Library in 1927. And so I
Wow.
start going through this list, and anytime I found a female name, I would do like a quick search, and I found like 5 more lost ladies of garden writing that are extremely
Yes,
interesting.
good
And
ones.
the one that I was really excited about, I had to call you yesterday to tell you about her.
Yeah,
And
that was really cool. But we're
and
not
so
gonna we're not gonna talk about her this week because that's a
no,
teaser.
no, it is a teaser. And her book was originally published in 1872, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Garden commissions,
Can you imagine a woman writing a gardening book in 1872 and getting it published? Pretty impressive.
very impressive. Like the 2 women that ran the Colorado River.
Yeah, women and men are really cool. Human beings are awesome. All right. So my garden commission is I'm going to keep weeding and stuff because we're just at that stage where the weeds are having a glorious time. In fact, I'm sitting out here looking out into this bed, this garden bed out here, and there is a weed that is 6 feet tall in it. So after we get done, I might go out there and pull it, but I might not because I took a shower today. It might be tomorrow. Just
Isn't
saying.
it funny how you in and out of your garden all day long, and then one day you look out and you say, "How
Where did
did
that
that
come from?
6 foot weed get there?" It's like under my spruce tree. I don't know. I probably talked about had to crawl under there one day because like there's a full grown Asian
Mhm.
honeysuckle growing under this up and through the spruce. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, it was horrible getting under there to pull that thing out. Anyway,
This one's going to be terrible because you know what it is? It's a lamb's quarter.
oh,
That
yeah.
thing's got a root to freaking China.
Oh,
All right.
yeah.
And I'm also harvesting all my annual flowers to keep them
Lamb's
blooming.
quarter is edible, by the way.
I will not be eating this lamb's quarter because I don't want to. I just want it to go away because it looks like poo poo in that garden. Anyway, what are you going to be doing?
So I'm going to mow, got to harvest more stuff, water, weed, repeat. I've tended in my little perennial and biennial seedlings. They're slowly coming
Yeah.
along. They are outside now and not, I feel like they're beefing up, but some of them are still rather tiny and frail looking, like, they got a little bit elongated inside. So we'll see. And then I have to give some love to my sadly neglected houseplants. I think I said that last week, but I got to get those things
Oh,
watered.
man. Those poor babies. I've started watering them every Friday. See, I
That's a
used to
good
water them
way.
every Sunday after church, but now I make breakfast after church. So, because we have brunch, and so I forget. So I started watering them on Fridays with Maddie. I got a funny story about Maddie. You want to hear it?
I do.
Okay, so I actually have two. Bear with me. I love being a grandparent, people. All right, so the other day they came over to eat dinner because they came over on Friday night, so we're recording this on a Friday. And she likes to help set the table, which is very amusing. Let's just put it that
Yes.
way. All of a sudden, I see Megan in the kitchen grabbing up the vase of flowers. She takes it in, plunks it in on the dining room table, and she goes, "Okay, there. Are you satisfied?" And Maddie goes, "Yes." That's number one. The second one is the other day, Megan was doing something and Maddie was playing outside. And Megan saw me on Instagram with a video and she goes, "Oh, look, Maddie, Gigi's doing a video about a flower." And Maddie turns around and she watches it for a little bit. And she said she sat there and nodded along like,
Like,
like a little,
yeah,
like the little expert she is. And then
yeah,
she says,
yeah,
she goes, "Yeah, that Gigi, she's teaching us stuff."
yeah.
Oh, it just made my heart so happy. That
Okay.
kid's a natural born gardener. I'm just saying.
Now I have a funny kid story to tell you, and then I'll tell you one last
Please
thing I'm
do.
going to do. So I did go to the dentist this past week. I didn't have any
Mhm.
cavities. And the dentist
Go
is
you.
he's this nice guy and he's got kids. And I think he's got a boy that's 2 and a girl that's maybe 4 and then an infant that's like 6, 8 months or something. Anyway, he
Hmm.
says they're night owls. And he says, we cannot get them to go to bed. And he says they have those Brain Quest cards, for the
Yeah,
older one.
my kids play with those. Uh-huh.
So the older one, who's like 4 going on 5, she can actually read some of them. He says his 2-year-old son, who cannot read, is sitting in his crib and he's like, "You have to go to sleep now." And he's like, "Dada, I'm learning." And so he says, "How do you tell a kid, stop learning? You got to go to sleep?" "Dada, I'm
Give your
learning."
brain a rest. Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway,
Maddie's very busy and she is very much always learning. She's 4. So I
so,
guess we should wrap this up with our
well,
kids
one
story.
more thing I'm going to do.
Oh,
I've got to sit down and I do need to think about and order some bulbs for fall because I haven't done that. And we talked about that last week. Dee's going, I have. All right.
I did. I ordered a whole bunch of bulbs. But I need to look and see if there's anything else I need. But here's the deal. Last year, I swore I wasn't going to buy so many because they're a pain to plant.
I
That's all.
think this spring you said you weren't going to buy any more.
I did, but not so many is what I said.
No, I think you said you were done buying bulbs.
I know I said that, but I lied. And we've already discussed how I lied. Let's wrap this up.
Yes. Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern.
If you subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, you'll get a link to listen to the podcast a day early.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout, which we appreciate, or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.